Now I've had a few requests recently for some old school winged wet flies. Now we've done a few on the channel before, but if you are interested in seeing another one, stick around. Hello everybody, welcome to Savage Flies. I'm Matt, thanks for stopping by. So when I decided to go for an old school winged wet fly today, I naturally reached for Ray Bergman's Trout, the 1938 seminal book. I mean, there are 10 plates. Let me show you one real quick. 10 of these plates right here with about 50 flies each. So if any of y'all out there are interested in some of these old classic wet flies, it'd probably be worth trying to find a copy of this book. So for today's fly, I just decided to start with plate 1 of this book, fly number 1. It's called the Abbey. Now this fly is also mentioned in Mary Orvis Marbury's Favorite Flies in Their History from the 1890s. It was created by a guy named Charles Abbey, who ran a firm in New York City called Abbey and Embry from about 1820s through the rest of the 1800s, and at one time was the only commercial fly tying operation in the country. And other than that Charles Abbey is credited with creating this fly, there's not a lot of history on it. Some folks even say that it was probably a fly that came over from England even before Abbey was credited with it. So the real origin of it we may never know, but it has been a pretty effective fly and a fairly popular fly for, well over 100 years. I mean, you can still buy this pattern out there today. Lots of folks still tie it. You can see all kinds of pictures of it online, so it is far from a forgotten fly. But it's definitely an old pattern, and I think it's a pretty cool looking one. It's not all that hard to tie. The mallard flank for the wing can be a little bit tricky, but the good thing about that, if you mess it up, it's going to fish just fine. It just won't look as pretty. So I think you're going to like it. Let's give it a shot. So there's one in the vise. If you notice, I think this rib is just a little too thick. I should have used a smaller size tinsel on it, and the tag's a little bit wonky. So let's see if we can do this just a little bit better. This is a size 10. It's a 1X long, 1X strong wet fly hook. And I'm going to put down a base of black 70 denier. Take it all the way back to the start of the bend. Oh, got a funny story for you. I was out earlier this evening after supper. My daughter just got a new boomerang, so we were going to go out and play with that, and I could not remember how to make that thing work, but it came back to me. So after you wrap this thread to the start of the bend, we are going to put a little tag on it. So I'm going to use the same Mallard tinsel. If you notice, this is a one size smaller than that fly you just saw, and I think this is going to look better. We'll see. But before I did that last one, I thought the size 14, the medium, was going to work, and turns out it did not look that good. So several wraps to lock that in. Let's snip off this excess. Should probably let my thread flatten out just a second, but flip this over so you've got the gold side showing, and up to you how many wraps back you want to do, but I think 3, maybe 4 of this thinner stuff will look good. So let's see what 4 does for us. Okay, that's going to be good right there, I think. Now let's take it back up and we'll catch it off. Good thing about this smaller stuff, it does wrap a little bit easier, and it doesn't create the lumps like that thicker stuff did, generally speaking. Okay. Alright, I think that's going to be fine right there. I'm going to back this thread off a couple of turns so I can lock this in right here. And with this mylar tinsel like this, you do have to be careful because it will cut your thread if you're not careful. So we got 2 wraps right there, and yeah, that's going to be fine. I'm going to go ahead and snip this off. You could leave it if you were real good. I guess you could leave that, then do your tail, then tie in your body, and then wrap the rib, but I'm going to just come back to that, tie it in again. So for the tail, some of my favorite, this golden pheasant tippet right here. And how I like to do this, I just grab it by the tips, reach in here, and we'll snip off 8, maybe 10. And I'm going to cut it off as far up as I can get it, pull the main part of the stem out, and measure length. So I think we're going to be good right there. So let's catch this in. And I left this long on purpose to kind of help with my underbody. So I got a little bit of my tinsel tag hanging off right there. All right, just make sure my thread is flat enough here. See that tinsel right there? We're probably just gonna have to trim that. Let's do that. Let's try and trim this. Okay, we can live with that. We're fine shape. So let's do some loose wraps right here just to try to keep this along the top of the hook. Whatever you can do to minimize any lumps will make your body look better. Okay, now let's tie in the rib. So this same stuff, actually let's take our thread back. This same rib that we use for the tag, that's what we're going to use here. A couple of open wraps right here. I'm trying not to get too big of too thick on my backside right here. We'll see if it works in just a second. Now I'm going to catch in my floss up front and then wrap it down and back up. So I'll have at least 2 layers of floss. Lick my fingers, kind of get it stuck together right there. All right, catch that in. Let's just pull that down so we don't have any to trim. And there we go. Now let's wrap this down and back and see if we can do it and keep our body flat. And you might, if it starts spreading out on you, you might want to just give this a clockwise spin to tighten it back up. And vice versa, you might want to let it flatten out if it's getting too thick on you. So let's take it down and back and see what it does for us. Okay, we got that back up. Let's do a couple of securing wraps right there before we snip this off. Now that body is not perfectly smooth, but I have certainly made lumpier ones in my day. Now I'm just going to counter wrap this rib. One wrap right at the back. And then open spirals going up. Whatever you think looks good, but on this size 10, probably a good 4 or 5 wraps should look good. Okay, now you get it up the front, go ahead and catch this off. So does that rib look better than the one I showed you at the start? I think so. I think that's the right size. I didn't get them perfectly evenly spaced, but that's okay. If that was really important, I would just have unwrapped and rewrapped it back up. So we do have a throat on this guy. It's just brown. Now I'm going to use hen, but you could use cock for this if you want, but it's not a long throat. I do like it a little bit bushy though, so I'm going to take a good 15 fibers or so right here and just catch it in on the bottom. Let's do 2 medium loose wraps and then check where we are. Okay, I like that as a throat, so I'm going to go ahead and a couple of securing wraps right there and snip off this excess. Just get in here and get it as close as you can. It'll make your head a little bit neater. Okay, that's going to be fine. Couple wraps to just kind of pretty this up before we go in with our wing. All right. Now the wing, it's mallard flank, just natural mallard flank fibers, and you can kind of treat these like a duck, quill wing feathers. by trying to find a left and a right. It's not the easiest thing to do, and it's not all that easy to get them to line up, but so you can try, and you might be able to keep this profile, but they might also flare up on you and the tips just go all wonky, but that's okay. A lot of them you'll see a lot of them tied that way. But I'm going to just try to catch this in like a winged wet fly here. So get your length, measure your length, and swap hands. I'm going to do a pinch wrap right here, and then one more, and then let's check it. So you can see what I'm talking about. They kind of split up on me right there, and that's okay. If you really want to work with it, just pull them up and then try to recapture them. You can probably do that 2 or 3 times before you've mangled them too much. So I'm going to live with this, I think. And just try to get them on top right there. They're a little bit shaggy, but I think we're going to be fine. After 5 minutes of fishing this thing, they're going to be all over the place anyway. So let's just snip that off. You could singe these, I guess, if you really wanted. I'm just going to push them up with my fingernail and then try to bury those in with my thread right in the head. So several wraps. It's a wet fly. You don't have to have a tiny head. And I think that's going to be fine right there. Let's go ahead and put a whip finish on it. So there we go. Put a drop of head cement and call this one done. So does this one look better than the other one? Nah, I don't know. I think the body looks better. The head looks okay, but that wing's going all over the place. So I'm happy enough with it. I'm going to put some head cement and put this one in my box. So that's it, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Y'all take care. We'll see you next time.